Greetings, and welcome to the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study. My name is Dan Carpenter, and I'm the Freed Professor of Government at Harvard and the Director of the Social Sciences Program at the Radcliffe Institute. We are here tonight to experience a reading of the play Sliver of a Full Moon. Tonight's reading is supported by the Harvard University Native American Program, or HUNAP, the Academic Ventures Program at Radcliffe, the Harvard Native Law Students Association, Harvard Divinity School, the Standing Committee on Ethnicity, Migration, and Rights, and the Donald T. Reagan Lecture Fund, with support also from the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center and the Office of the President and Provost at Harvard University. Tonight's event also marks something of a critical event in a much longer drama, namely, a set of events and programs for the discussion of vital Native American and Indigenous issues, a theme running through the 2015-2016 academic year here at Radcliffe, and a theme chosen in partnership with HUNAP entitled The Performance of Native and Indigenous Politics. Radcliffe has embarked upon this series of conversations and events not because the Institute has particular expertise in this area, but because Radcliffe and Harvard have clear needs and indeed obligations to enrich our dialogue on Native and Indigenous issues. A university is a conversation, a highly bureaucratized conversation to be sure, but a vital dialogue nonetheless. And it is vital to the future of Harvard and in deep consistency with Harvard's Native past that the voice of Native American and Indigenous peoples here be amplified and strengthened. I hope tonight's event can play a part, even a small part, in that strengthening, in that amplification. And it is with thanks to HUNAP and associated Native and Native Studies leaders at Harvard that this process has been renewing. We at Radcliffe are pleased and honored to play a small collaborative part in this much larger and longer-term dialogue. Previous events in the series of events that we're talking about here included a talk at Harvard Law School by Professor Angela Riley of UCLA on Indigenous women, violence, and human rights. She is, by the way, with us tonight. Also, a reading of poetry by Anishinaabe poet and literature scholar Gerald Visner, and a lecture last year by Yale professor Ned Blackhawk. Future events will include a poetry reading by Lucy Tapahanso, the inaugural poet laureate of the Navajo Nation, a lecture by Native Hawaiian writer Christiana Kahakawila, a photographic exhibit by Matika Wilbur of her Project 562, surveying all federally recognized Native American tribes, and the conference Native Peoples, Native Politics on April 29, 2016, followed the next day by the annual HUNAP Powwow. Everyone here is welcome to these events, and I remind you that all of these events I've just mentioned are listed in tonight's program and equally on the Radcliffe website. Now, let me introduce Shelley Lowe of the Navajo Nation, who serves as Executive Director of the Harvard University Native American Program. Native and Indigenous students at Harvard can testify to the warm and supportive home away from home that HUNAP provides. They testify, in fact, every day with their feet as they hang out in HUNAP's offices. They're pretty comfy. I've been there myself. Shelley and her group have demonstrated amazing and energetic commitment to the Native American community at Harvard and to the joint programming year at Radcliffe. And I can speak for everyone at Radcliffe when I say that it has been a privilege to work with her and with Faculty Chair Dr. Dennis Norman, Community Coordinator Jason Pacino, Administrative Assistant Samantha Hernandez, and the entire HUNAP community. We are honored, and I am lucky to call them Harvard colleagues. Shelley.
Dan, thank you for those words. Yat e she Shelley Lowe yanishya bilagana nishle nanestisha tachini bashachi bilagana dashache do tabaha dashanale locantia de nasha. My name is Shelley Lowe. I'm Navajo from Ganado, Arizona. On behalf of HUNAP, I would like to welcome everyone tonight, and along with the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study, I thank you for joining us. I would like to acknowledge the Wampanoag, Nipmuc, and Massachusetts people whose homeland we are on tonight, and I want to thank them for their stewardship and for their continued leadership. As I was preparing for tonight's remarks, I was struck by some words in an article about the young Sakonjo Lakota artist Frank Wall, who will be joining us in April at one of our events. The writer of the article states, "We are born into stories, all of us. We must learn to address the sins of the past so that we can break and transcend those cycles of trauma and abuse. These are the sorts of messages we find in art worth talking about. As Native and Indigenous people, we are each born into specific and very purposeful creation stories. We embody these stories, and we continue to live in them today. Many of us were told these stories at a very young age in order to educate us, or to teach us how to behave in certain situations, or to explain to us the natural and the spiritual world that we live in. It seems quite often, though, some stories were reiterated to us by older brothers and sisters, or by aunties and uncles, in order to scare us. Naturally, many of our stories are about negative entities that often prey on our people, particularly our women and our children. These bad entities can take many forms. They can be earthly beings, they can be animal beings, they can be spiritual beings, and they can be other human beings. These beings can wreak havoc on our people in violent and deadly ways. What our teasing family members often neglect to tell us, however, is that our stories almost always end with a defeat of these negative entities. Our stories give us solutions and ways to defend ourselves. They explain challenges we must overcome in order to acquire specific weapons or behaviors needed to defend the young, the old, our women, and our men from beings that threaten or hurt us. Our stories assure us that we can be safe, healthy, and strong communities. Tonight we are going to hear a new creation story. This story is about a threat to our communities. It is about finding a way to defend our women and children. This story is being told to us tonight to encourage us and to remind us we can overcome challenges. Tonight's story, however, doesn't have a complete ending. In this story, we are only beginning to understand and gather legal weapons needed to defend our women. Tonight's story provides only a sliver of the solution needed to protect our futures. Still, the message of tonight's story is art worth talking about, because the more we tell this story, the closer we'll come to achieving a full moon instead of a sliver of a full moon. I want to invite Erin Caslow and Esther Labredo to come up and say a few words on behalf of the Native American Law Student Association at Harvard.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Esther Labrado, and I'm a member of the North Fork Rancheria of Mono Indians of California and a descendant of the Morongo Band of Mission Indians. And as Shelley mentioned, I'm also a co-president, along with Erin Caslow, of the Harvard Native American Law Students Association. And we are just so excited to be here tonight, and we want to say thank you to HUNAP and Radcliffe and to everyone else who's worked so hard to make tonight possible. Harvard also works hard to foster an educational and social atmosphere for Native students at Harvard Law School and to raise awareness and encourage dialogue about issues facing the Native American community. We host and co-sponsor events throughout the school year to further these goals, which is why we're so excited to be part of this event tonight. This issue is incredibly important, not just to the Native American community, but it's also important and a good example of why we're here. The statistics about domestic violence against Native women are both staggering and heartbreaking. And the fact that for so long, so many of those crimes went unpunished is even worse. As you will learn through the play and through the panel discussion afterwards, it was the law that allowed those offenders to go unpunished. And it is the law that has attempted to change that. This event is important to me, not just as a Native woman, but as a law student and as a future lawyer. I came to law school because I wanted to be able to more effectively help others and to provide a voice for those who so often go unheard. If I can use my law degree to, in some small way, help Native communities and the issues that they will continue to face, I'll be forever grateful.
As Esther said, my name's Aaron Caslow, and I'm a descendant of the Iron Band of Miwok Indians in Northern California. And to echo Esther's comments, I'd like to thank Radcliffe and HUNAP and everyone else involved for bringing this play to Harvard. To me, a sliver of a full moon represents actually a celebration of Native communities working and striving to improve the lives of our Native women. And this is especially important because in my community and in Native communities in general, it's our tradition to honor and respect our Native women. And while I was thinking about what to say right now, I realized that at this point in my life, I'm truly blessed to be honored and surrounded by a bunch of amazing Native women. My co-president, Esther, who takes a lion's share of the work because she can manage it better than I can. Liz and Lauren are two 3Ls who are extremely successful at Harvard Law. Maggie McKinley, the Climenko Fellow at Harvard Law, who's been an amazing mentor and caring friend to me, and visiting Professor Angela Riley, who's opened my eyes to the world of federal Indian law. I'm thankful to all of you for helping me continue to grow as a person, a student, and a Native man. I also want to thank my mother, who's I don't think is here right now. But she grew up in extreme poverty and faced conditions that are too common in Native communities. Yet as a single mother, who first without a high school diploma and now as a doctoral student here at Harvard, worked her entire life to ensure that I didn't experience what she had to go through. To me, she's the perfect example of why our Indian communities honor their women and why we need to continue this practice. She and the other Native women I mentioned worked tirelessly for others and for our communities. And now I'm excited to watch a play written by another Native woman, Mary Kathryn, and a play that I believe honors this tradition. Thank you.
And we now welcome to the stage Mary Ann Hendricks to give the blessing.
Good evening. Manatu, Mamai Masukanak. Manatu Kanuta. Creator, Almighty Creator, hear me. First of all, I want to acknowledge the Radcliffe Institute and Harvard University Native American program for giving me this opportunity to bless those who have worked tirelessly to bring about a very important change in the Violence Against Women Act. We pray that the reauthorization of VAWA 2013 brings hope to many that finally there will be justice for the horrendous treatment that Indian women have endured on reservations throughout this country. I also want to acknowledge the first people on whose land we stand and their ancestors, and to bless the many tribes represented here tonight. We pray for the survivors of domestic violence whose nightmares, physical and emotional scars are reminders of what love meant to them. Yes, we know all too well what PTSD is, and healing is a long process. We pray that children will learn at an early age, through teachings and examples, that love means respect, kindness, compassion, and that it's important to love oneself, to expect fairness and equality in any relationship. We pray that Sliver of a full moon brings everyone together with strength to break the silence of domestic violence. Aho.
Thank you, Sachem Hendricks. We will now begin the reading. I wish to note that Diane Milich of the Southern Ute tribe is unable to be with us this evening, and her role will be occupied by the playwright, Mary Kathryn Nagle of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. And now we present Sliver of a Full Moon.
Nanu I remember where I was.
I remember what I was doing.
I remember what I was thinking.
And I will never forget.
I was on the floor of the house.
At my home in Fairfax.
On my reservation.
In Cherokee.
In Alaska.
Watching CNN.
C-SPAN.
Facebook.
Watching the vote.
Working for votes.
I couldn't breathe.
I was so nervous.
All I could do was pray.
What's the vote?
30.
We got 30?
We need 218.
We need your vote. You got my vote.
31.
Thank you.
62.
My whole life.
I've dreamed of this.
85.
I prayed for this.
114.
You got my vote, Tom.
Thank you.
115.
Everything depends on this.
What if we lose?
We can't lose.
Not an option.
201.
201.
Oh my God.
I just prayed.
To Creator.
215.
Holy smokes.
216.
We got this.
217.
Is this for real?
218.
We did it.
218.
218.
They're still coming.
More votes.
235. 246.
250.
285.
286.
286.
286.
186 votes.
I couldn't believe it.
Unbelievable.
I had to call Jax.
Terry texted me.
I just started texting.
I started crying.
I could hardly see who I was texting. I was crying so hard.
I had to scream.
I scared my neighbors.
I did victory dance.
I prayed for my sisters.
It just seemed unreal.
It felt like a dream.
It was amazing.
It was humbling.
It was a miracle.
What about Alaska?
Next time.
Why were we
promise.
left out?
We were told
Everyone says
Alaska's different.
Why are we different? When Violence Against Women's Act passed, I was watching TV and I started to cry. The rate of violence against Native women in Alaska are higher than anywhere else in the United States, and yet, however, we're always forgotten. Violence like this in our village do not always exist. There was a time before the United States, Alaska, a state, a time when our tribal government had authority. If a man mistreated a woman in our village, our tribal government would exercise its jurisdiction and protect our women. But when the federal government made Alaska a state in 1959, they took away our lands, our culture, our language, our jurisdiction, and our safety. Tribal sovereignty in Alaska is a dirty word. Most people want to pretend we don't exist, but the truth is we're still here. We'll always be here. We will never leave. Alaska, the state, has a bit of doom mentality. First it was the Russian and fur, then the Americans and gold. Now it's the oil and the pipeline. But my people, we have been here for thousands of years, from the time of the glacier until now. We were here before the Russians. We were here when they came. Our men gave them fur and in exchange gave us alcohol. And then they took our women.
This one.
We had no choice.
Just one night. I'll bring her back.
We had Columbus. We had the Russians. Tell me, how is that different?
This is my story.
This is my story.
This is my story.
The story of my sister.
My daughter.
The story of my mother.
And her mother.
And her mother's mother.
My grandmother.
My granddaughter.
This is the story.
Of my life.
Of my past.
Of my people.
This is my story.
At first, it was hard to share it.
I had to keep it a secret.
I was too ashamed.
Too embarrassed.
Too afraid.
Scared.
Forgotten.
I was silenced.
I thought I'd be judged.
For something I never did.
But then we came together.
We stopped the silence.
If I wasn't Native,
my story would be different.
If I didn't live on my reservation,
my story would be different.
If I wasn't a citizen of a sovereign Indian nation,
my story would be different.
I live in Alaska. When it comes to justice, that shouldn't make my story any different.
This is my story.
And I'm here to share it. One sunny afternoon in May, I was returning my daughters to their father, per our agreement. I dropped them off and made sure he was home, and they were in the house before leaving, as usual. But he walked out to stand beside my car. I stayed in the car with the door locked, but the car windows were down. He was agreeable enough at first, but then he became angry because I didn't wish him a happy anniversary. I stated that it didn't seem appropriate under the circumstances. He suddenly lunged in the car window and snatched my bag, took out an address book, flipped through it, and became angry. He reached in and grabbed my car keys from the ignition and walked away with my keys. And he was going to throw the keys. I live in the mountains of western North Carolina. There are trees and woods, things like that all around, everywhere. And that was the only car key I had. And I thought, if he throws that key, if I don't have a way to get out of here, I don't know what I'll do. So I was trying to get the key. And he turned and he finally said, "Okay, you can have your keys," and threw them on the ground. So when I leaned down to get my keys, he kicked me, and I rolled down a little hill. At the time, my youngest daughter was standing beside my car. I didn't even know she was outside. And I thought she was in the house. And when I rolled down the hill, I rolled into her and she fell. And he grabbed her. I was trying to comfort her, but he grabbed her hands and he pulled so hard that I was sliding across the ground, so I let go. But he went immediately to the police station and he got there before me.
Can I help you?
I need to get a protective order.
Okay, well,
Can you do that for me?
we don't have jurisdiction over non-natives.
My wife's enrolled, and she's a danger to our children.
Fill this out and we'll process it.
It was so humiliating to be sitting at the police department with leaves and grass in my hair, dirt on my clothes, and my clothes were torn. On my side, near my rib area, within the next day or two, a bruise formed, shaped perfectly like his foot. There must be something you can do.
He's not enrolled.
He has my children.
And a protective order against you. So whatever you do, don't go near him.
He had my children, and all I had was a bruise shaped like his foot. Maybe you've never heard a Native woman tell her story of survival before. Maybe because you've seen movies like The Last of the Mohicans or Peter Pan. You think at some point in time we ceased to exist, but we're still here. Some of us live on reservations. Some of us live in suburbs. We even live in Washington, D.C.
Hello. Hi. Excuse me.
Do you need something?
I'm Terry Henry.
Okay.
Is this the Office on Violence Against Women?
You're looking at it.
There's no carpet.
Is that a problem?
No, I just thought that there
You
would...
thought because today is your first day we'd roll out the red carpet.
I thought there would be carpet, yes.
You work for the federal government now. You'll learn to do without. Here's everything you'll need. To start with, I want you to draft the RFPs that we send to the tribes. VAWA provides for a significant chunk of change. VAWA, you know what that is?
Yes,
Violence Against Women's Act.
I know.
We work to stop violence. We don't promote it.
I get it.
Oh, and our reports to Congress, you'll be responsible for writing those. Basically, you'll be doing all of the policy work for the implementation of VAWA grants in Indian country. Any questions?
Yes, just a few.
Good. And welcome. We do so much work with Native Americans. It's nice to finally have one in the office.
My mother, she's a very beautiful Indian woman. And my stepfather, well, he is a non-native, a white man. And he's very abusive, ungodly. The earliest that I remember is being 4 years old. When we were in this trailer house and my mom was screaming, I'm under the table, I'm screaming. The lights are off. The lights are coming in from the post from outside. The door is here, the couch is here, the TV is here, and the gun rack is right there. And the table in the kitchen is right here, and I'm under it. My mom is screaming, no, David, no! And I see him grab the gun, and he starts beating my mother over the head with the butt of the shotgun until the only screams that could be heard were mine, coming from under the table. And I think he beat her to what he believed was to death. Put the gun back on the rack, he called her a bitch, walked into the bedroom, slammed the door, sat down on the squeaky bed, and thud, thud of the cowboy boots as they hit the floor, and he lay down in the squeaky bed again, and he went to sleep. So I crawled over to my mom. I'm crying so hard because I think she's dead. So I put my face down to her mouth to see if I could feel her breath, and I can't feel it. And so then I start crying again. And then I'm only 4, and I make myself stop crying. I put my head down on her chest to see if I could feel it rising, and it was. So I grabbed a blanket off the couch, and I covered her up. And I sat by her all night, and if I fell asleep, I'd get mad at myself because I'd hurry up and check to see if she was still breathing. It's not that I could have saved her. It's just that I didn't want her to die alone.
This isn't an actress.
Lisa's a survivor.
I'm a survivor.
We're all survivors.
There were times he would be chasing us, and there was this field, and I got my mom, said, get down, Mama, the moon is full. And we'd crawl across this field until we got to the woods, and I took her to my hiding place, where we'd listen to him, to his screams that would echo, his screams about how he was going to kill us when he found us. And she'd lay down and she'd go to sleep. And if I thought I heard him coming, I would wake her up, and I would take her deeper into the woods, because he had been in Vietnam. So when I reflect back, he was afraid of the woods. He was afraid of the night. In the woods, the night, we were safe. The moon was our sanctuary, if we could make it.
I found a rat this morning. Yes, a rat underneath my desk, and it ripped open a bag of chips.
You want me to buy you a bag of chips?
Look, I really need to talk to you
About rats?
about the grants we're giving tribes.
What about them?
I'm not sure they're making much of a difference.
So give them to different tribes.
That's not the issue.
What's the issue?
Our women are raped. They go missing. They're murdered.
And our office gives tribes the money they need to deal with that.
Yes, but after the fact.
The fact of what?
We come in after the violence has occurred. By the time the women walk in the door of one of our programs, they're already a victim.
Oh, yeah, right. You're not a victim unless something has happened to you. Listen here, Pocahontas. It's a miracle you can give tribes any funding at all. A lot of us here in D.C. worked hard in '94 to get the Violence Against Women's Act passed. We didn't have to ask for funding for tribal domestic violence programs, but we did. You should be thankful for what you have.
Lynn Hooch and several women opened a shelter in Emonic, Alaska, 27 years ago. It is still today the only shelter in Native women for the entire state of Alaska. When we opened, our women had nowhere to go. We'd find them hiding in smoke houses and steam houses. They tell our tribe we don't have jurisdiction, that we don't exercise any kind of authority. When we call the state troopers for help, it takes 2 or 3 days for them to arrive and to respond. Our villages are so remote. Where I live in Tetlin, there is no roads. The only way to come and go is by airplane. For 3 decades, this shelter has been the only place our women can go. State cut our funding?
I heard.
What's this?
A grant from the DOJ OVW office, enough to keep you open.
I just put 3 women on the street.
Tell them to come back.
One of the women, I just asked her to leave. Her husband tried to kill her.
We'll get her a protection order.
She has one. The tribe issued it last week.
That's great.
The state of Alaska refuses to enforce it.
How can they refuse to enforce a protection order?
They say we don't have jurisdiction.
What are you doing?
What's it look like I'm doing? I'm packing.
Did you ask for time off?
No.
A report to Congress is due at the end of the month, and I'm going to need
I'm not
you.
coming back.
What?
I'm going home.
I
To Cherokee.
suppose the rats were just too much.
I'm done applying Band-Aids.
Our Band-Aids make a difference. They provide your people with funding.
My people don't need your funding.
Tribes do. They want to provide shelter and food and counseling.
We have to do more than give women counseling.
Oh, you're right. Please stand back and let me wave my magic wand and make all the violence go away.
We don't need your magic wand. We need jurisdiction.
My people, the Southern Ute, we're the only tribe in Colorado. I've lived my whole life here on our reservation. Our reservation is our land, and our jurisdiction comes from the land. Creator placed us here. So we've been here since creation, and this stripping of our jurisdiction, this taking, it isn't real. But it almost cost me my life. When I was 26 years old, I started dating a non-Indian, a white man. I was in love. Life was wonderful. And after the bliss of dating 6 months, we were married. He moved into my house and lived on my reservation with me. To my shock, just days after our marriage, he assaulted me. I thought after the first time it wouldn't happen again, but then it happened a second time, and a third. So I called for help. And then I called for help again. And again, I called so many times, but no one could ever help me.
If you're so upset, why don't you make one of your calls? That's okay, baby. I'll make it for you.
Tribal police, is this an emergency?
Well, not exactly.
Can I help you?
I just want to apologize because, you see, I got a little carried away this morning, and, well, I hit my wife.
Are you enrolled?
I'm white.
So you're not enrolled.
Is that a problem?
You've called before.
Yeah, well,
Nothing's changed. If you're not enrolled, we don't have jurisdiction.
he says he doesn't have jurisdiction. You want to talk to him? Thanks for your help, officer. When will you finally get it?
He can do whatever he wants.
They can't touch me.
I picked up the phone.
I made a call.
I kept calling.
No one responded.
I must have called 100 times.
Please, can't you do something?
The answer was always the same.
We can't.
He's
not enrolled.
He's not Indian.
So we don't have jurisdiction.
But I kept calling.
I called the police.
Please help.
Every time.
911.
911.
911.
I need your help.
But every time I called,
No one showed up.
They would just write a report.
They always let him go.
I remember looking back at those police reports in 8-point font. Years later, my mom asked me to be her advocate. So I pulled all of my stepfather's police records. And there were pages, all of those 911 calls, in 8-point font, individual calls. There had to have been at least 7 to 8, 9 pages. That's how many 911 calls were made for help. And he was never, ever, once, ever convicted for anything he ever did to her.
It wasn't always this way.
There was a time before.
Before 1978,
a time when we had jurisdiction.
Before Oliphant.
I remember when I read Oliphant.
I can't believe it.
My dad called me.
Tribal Council convened an emergency meeting.
Said, you better read this.
The Supreme Court issued a decision.
It's going to change our lives.
1978.
The Supreme Court said we can't prosecute non-natives.
Non-Indians.
Anyone that's not enrolled.
The court said we can't prosecute them if they come onto our lands and commit crimes.
1978.
My stepfather.
My husband,
He's non-native.
Not enrolled.
And after Oliphant,
he began to realize.
After Oliphant,
he figured it out.
After Oliphant,
he knew.
It didn't matter if I had bruises
or cuts
or bleeding
or a broken bone because of Oliphant.
He could kill me, and it wouldn't matter.
As soon as the Supreme Court issued its decision, our sisters from every corner of Turtle Island went into action. Our sisters in South Dakota opened the White Buffalo Calf Women's Shelter, the first shelter for Native women in the country. The fight to restore our jurisdiction continued for several decades, and in 2003, I was honored to be at the first meeting of our tribal coalitions in Arizona, when we created the National Congress of American Indians Task Force on Violence Against Women. We've come a long way since that meeting back in 2003, but I know we wouldn't be where we are now if we, as Native women, hadn't stood up. If we hadn't demanded that our tribal leaders listen to us. Many of our tribal leaders took our messages back home to their own tribes, and we watched as our Native women gave birth to a national movement.
Osio, and thank you for having me here today to present.
Shio.
Sorry?
This is Eastern Band. We say Osio.
You're not in Oklahoma anymore.
So, how long will this take?
Well, with what I'm prepared to present, not more than 40 minutes.
No, I mean the campaign. How long will it take to get the bill passed, with the tribal jurisdiction provision?
Well, with the Congress, who knows? It could take quite a while.
Quite a while.
Months? Years?
Nothing's guaranteed.
We've been working on this for years.
I'm well aware.
We sponsored the wiping of the tears ceremony with Senator Biden, prepared the draft for VAWA 2005.
I remember that.
But you think the time is now.
We need them to act now.
You need them to act now.
This has nothing to do with me.
Terry, here is co-chair of NCAI Task Force on Violence Against Women.
We're proud of her appointment.
It has no effect on my service to council.
Sure it does. You're sitting here telling us we ought to advocate for jurisdiction for everyone.
Yes.
Why should Eastern Band foot the bill for everyone?
Because we need jurisdiction.
If I may interject.
Please.
Now, I know it's a lot to ask, but you won't be the only ones. San Manuel stepped up, and Chief Anderson has promised the support of the Choctaw. Tulalip, Cherokee Nation?
Muskogee Creek?
I believe so.
I hope so. We can't do this alone.
Well, you won't be. Everyone is helping. See, we have to stop thinking about this as my tribe and their tribe. Divide and conquer has been the other side's philosophy since 1492.
Okay, but what are we really facing?
Why, I'm not sure I know what you mean.
If we put money on this now, what's the chance that we actually walk away with jurisdiction?
Well, it's going to be very difficult.
How difficult?
Challenging.
But not impossible.
We couldn't get the Dems to put it in the Law and Order Act just last year.
That wasn't a campaign.
Well, if we can't win the Dems, we'll never reach the Republicans.
This is different.
Well, I'm being honest with you, Terry.
Councilwoman Henry to you, Mr. Whitehawk. And let me tell you something about our tribal council. Our tribal council doesn't do things because they're possible. We do things because it's our responsibility to do them. It's our job to protect every man, woman, every child in our community. And we know that if we protect a woman in her home, then we protect her children. And that protects her house, and the house next to her, and the house next to that. And so pretty soon, it's the entire community we're able to protect.
Yes, but we need to be realistic about what we can do in this particular...
This isn't about what we can do. This is what we should do. And what we should do is fight for this Congress to recognize the inherent sovereignty we have as a tribal government to protect our people.
Put it to vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Whitehawk, you've authorized to lobby on behalf of Eastern Band of Cherokees for the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, specifically to advocate for the passage of the proposed tribal jurisdiction provision. Meeting's adjourned. We'll send you the contract.
Thank you.
Shki.
We expect a full court press.
You'll get nothing less.
Very difficult.
This will be difficult.
You know what's difficult? Listening to women who've been raped, abused, and battered ask you for help and having to tell them there's nothing you can do because you don't have jurisdiction.
Hey, I was tribal police before I went to law school. Now, I'd get a call, and before I could help her, I'd have to ask, where is she?
Is she on land that's tribal trust?
Or land that's been sold.
She could be on fee land.
And you can't just ask, where is she?
You have to ask, who is he?
Is he Indian?
Is he enrolled?
Because if he's not,
Tribal police don't have jurisdiction.
makes you want to never answer the phone. I'll get us 2 tickets for D.C. for Monday.
2?
You're going to walk the halls with me.
I think you're confused. I hired you, not the other way around.
Hey, I'll do the work, but I need you to be the voice.
Why me?
You're a woman and a tribal leader. You're a Councilwoman Henry.
Please, call me Terry.
I'll have my staffer get started on this right away.
We really do think now is the time.
Before this year's election.
Of course.
The Republicans desperately need women voters.
Oh, we can capitalize on that.
Is there someone you can reach out to across the aisle?
Crapo's agreed to co-sponsor.
You're gonna give this to a Republican?
Mike's good on Indian affairs.
Trust me, Terry, no one's gonna listen to a Democrat from Vermont.
We need him on this one.
Okay,
I'll have my staffer send you a draft of what we put together.
and you're serious about this.
We're 100% with you.
But are you really with us?
I'm not sure what you mean.
When you can't get the 60 votes you need, what's gonna be on the chopping block?
That's not how it works.
Don't get cheeky with me.
Terry.
If it's anything like the last 400 years, do you know who will be the first to fall off? Not immigrants, not LGBTQ. It'll be our Indian women.
That won't happen.
This bill won't protect anyone if it doesn't protect everyone.
I promise. We won't reauthorize VAWA without the tribal jurisdiction provision.
Well, we got the chair of the Judiciary Committee. That's a good start.
What next?
We're scheduled to visit Murkowski.
What's wrong?
I just got an email from her staffer. She canceled our meeting.
Senator, thank you for moving things around in your schedule so you could speak with me.
What do we need to discuss?
VAWA,
I made my position clear.
we know you intend to vote for it.
There's not a woman in the Senate who isn't.
The folks back in June.
Your boss?
The Attorney General thinks the tribal jurisdiction provision could use some editing.
The committee's agreed on the language.
What about a clarification?
I think the language is pretty clear.
Tribal jurisdiction is only restored to tribes in Indian country.
You want me to reference the Supreme Court's decision on Venetech?
What a great idea, Senator. I wish I'd thought of that myself.
I told them to include Alaska. I can't tell the committee I changed my mind.
Tell them Alaska's different. You and I both know there's no Indian country left in Alaska.
I was born in 1958. Alaska wasn't a state then. To me and to my family, it was simply our home. Growing up, I didn't speak English until I was 12. My first day at the BIA school, the teacher told me, never speak Athabascan, you speak English. When I did speak in my language, the teacher slapped my mouth with a ruler, or my hands. Sometimes she would pull my hair. At first, I was shocked. The BIA school was the first time I saw violence. One day, after I got my hair pulled, I ran home to my mom and I told her, I am never going back. They hit me if I speak my language and I don't ever want to go back. She was silent for a long time. And then she said, you have to. If you don't, they'll take you away and I might never see you again. I learned at a very young age that if I was quiet, I was safe. As a child, that they taught us for Native Alaskans, silence was our only safety.
The senator can't meet with you today, so it'll be me. I'm sorry. And you are?
Terry Henry. I serve on the Council of Eastern Band of Cherokee.
She's the co-chair for the National Congress of American Indians Committee on Violence Against Women.
Okay.
Now, we're here to discuss Leahy-Crapo, if you've had a chance to read the bill.
Look, I'm going to stop you right there and be honest with you. We're willing to stay as late as we need to tonight to work things out.
Okay, what's on the table?
We'd like to propose some language. We brought our pajamas.
Guess I forgot mine.
Wait, you removed jurisdiction.
We replace it with federal delegation.
Well, that won't work.
It has to.
No, Congress needs to restore jurisdiction, not delegate.
Congress can't recognize jurisdiction in Indian tribes.
Why not?
It's unconstitutional.
No, it's pre-constitutional. We existed as sovereign nations before you even had this document you call a constitution.
Terry.
The Supreme Court was clear in Oliphant. Tribes don't have jurisdiction. I mean, over non-natives. You, of course, have jurisdiction over your own people.
Just not your people.
If this is your attempt to charm the senator into voting for the bill, you're failing.
Hey, we've got the votes we need.
In the Senate, not in the House.
I'm sorry, does Senator Cornyn get a vote in the House?
Look, we're here to negotiate a deal with you. And you want to negotiate with us so you don't have to negotiate with Cantor.
I'd rather talk to Cantor.
Fine.
Thank you for your time.
You might pass in the Senate, but you'll never pass in the House.
We got to work on tone.
Tone?
We're asking people to give us something we want.
We're asking them to give us what they should have never taken.
Well, I agree with that, but it's 2012, not 1877. We have to take what we can get.
There was a time.
Before now,
There was a time
When we were safe,
when we didn't have this kind of violence.
not like we do now.
Our men knew to view women in a sacred manner.
not to say that we lived in a perfect society,
Because we didn't.
But we certainly didn't live in a society where women are treated like this.
It was never like this.
they introduced it.
When the soldiers came to round us up,
To send us on the trail of tears.
When they first put us on the reservation,
When they forced us to go back to their schools.
we had to hide
we had to go to the fort,
to get our food
To get our ration.
our commodities.
from the soldiers.
And when we went to the fort to get our food,
What's this?
I've come for my rations.
We're all out.
Please, sir, I have children.
I said we're all out.
I have to feed my children.
Coming back. Are you deaf? I said coming back. You don't get something for nothing around here. You want to feed your children, coming back.
my grandmother,
Our grandmothers.
Our grandmothers,
they
were raped
By the government agent.
for food
to feed their children.
Raped by the soldiers.
just because they could.
They had to run.
They had to hide.
They had no choice.
Our grandmothers,
My grandmother. They're survivors.
Survivors of war.
they weren't targeted because of the color of their skin.
They aren't targeted because of the color of our skin.
We're targeted because of who we are as Indian women.
As Native American women. As Alaskan Native women.
Because we're citizens of sovereign nations.
Because we're sovereign women.
It's been this way for 500 years. Since the Russians came.
Since 1492.
Since 1978.
We're still sovereign.
I wish I could say the war has ended.
But we live in conflict every day.
It's time for change.
That's awful.
It's the truth.
I had no idea.
Senator Brown, do you have a minute?
This is coming from Crapo?
I'm in a rush.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, I'd like to talk to you about VAWA,
Senator Heller wants you to know
the tribal jurisdiction provision
you have his vote.
Thank you.
You have my vote.
for Leahy Crapo.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Senator Collins,
Yes? Do I know you?
Dennis Whitehawk, I represent the Eastern Band of Cherokee.
And you
And you
want
want
to talk to me about
VAWA?
VAWA?
Yes.
Yes.
I spoke to Patty.
Well, we have some questions.
I like her answers.
The tribal jurisdiction provision is very important.
You have my vote.
Thank you.
Senator McCain agrees.
Great.
You have his vote.
Thank you.
But he doesn't think it'll pass the House.
Oh, Senator Snow,
We'd like to discuss VAWA.
Sure.
jurisdiction is critical. Without it,
You have my vote.
thank you.
And the vote of every Republican woman in the Senate.
That's great.
You look surprised?
I guess I didn't.
You didn't think a bunch of Republicans would support you on this. Let me tell you something. We may be Republicans, but first and foremost, we're women.
That's.
A lot of Republicans.
I talked to Brown,
I spoke to Snow
McCain staffer.
and Heller.
They said yes.
We might have enough votes.
Senator Moran wanted me to tell you.
No.
Senator Rubio, with all due respect.
He can't vote for this.
You won't change my mind on this.
Did he say why?
If you can't negotiate with Cornyn, you can't negotiate with him.
Okay, let me get this straight.
Big government and inefficiency.
The tribal jurisdiction provision restores jurisdiction at the local level.
I'm sorry.
You're taking authority away from the states.
I don't believe this.
And giving it to the feds.
That is not at all what we're doing.
I read the bill.
Senator Shelby wanted me to tell you
McCain's voting for it.
I'm Senator Lee, not McCain.
his vote is no.
Does he understand?
I'm late for a meeting.
Oh, Senator Toomey,
Yes?
I'd like to talk to you about VAWA.
Oh.
I have a meeting with Senator Weicker.
He's not here.
Look, the tribal jurisdiction provision is very important.
I understand your position,
When
but
will he be back?
I've made up my mind.
We said we would discuss VAWA.
I discussed it with him.
My vote is no.
He's against it.
No.
I'm sorry, I can't help you.
We just don't agree here.
Thank you for your time.
Spoke to Kim Teehee.
Where's the White House?
Well, they're fully on board.
That's great.
Leahy says they're voting this week.
Do we have enough votes?
I don't know. I'm worried we don't.
Senator Murray,
I hear what you're saying.
we have a right to this water.
Everyone says they have the right to the water.
Yes, but this water is ours.
Let me see
we
what
signed
I
a
can-
treaty with you, your government.
Let me see what I can do.
Thank you.
Deborah, one more thing.
Yeah?
VAWA.
Okay.
I need to be honest with you. Sean, I need you to tell Deborah everything you told me. Everything.
The vote's likely to happen in the next day or so.
That's great.
The tribal jurisdiction provision won't be in it.
What?
It's been taken out.
What about the immigrant provision?
Still in there.
LGBTQ?
Still in.
You realize we have tribal members who are LGBTQ.
Sure.
They won't be protected. Without jurisdiction, VAWA will do nothing to protect them on tribal lands.
We don't have the votes.
If we fight for tribal jurisdiction now, we'll lose the whole thing.
We can't afford to lose the entire VAWA.
What about my women, my citizens, the women that I represent?
We're so sorry.
We wrote letters. We came here to speak.
It's been decided.
There must be something we can do.
I could hold a press conference.
You think that would make a difference?
It would if you agreed to speak.
I'm not a policy analyst.
You're a tribal leader.
Yes, but
You're in here talking to me about your treaty rights. Isn't that what VAWA is about? It's really my honor to introduce you, Vice Councilwoman Deborah Parker. Very courageous in coming forward today to talk personally about why this is so very important to her and to so many other Native American women.
Thank you, Senator Murray, Senator Boxer, and Senator Klobuchar. Good morning. My name is Deborah Parker. I am an enrolled member of the Tulalip tribes of the state of Washington. I am currently serving as the vice chair of the Tulalip tribes. Yesterday, I shared with Senator Murray the reasons why the Violence Against Women Act is so important to our Native American women. I did not expect to be sharing my own story. I am a Native American statistic. I am a survivor of sexual and physical violence. My story starts in the 70s as a toddler. You may wonder, how do I remember when this occurred? I was the size of a couch cushion, a red velvet, approximately 2.5 feet couch cushion. One of the many girls violated and attacked by a man that had no boundaries or regards for a little girl's life, or my own. The man responsible was never convicted. In the early 80s, at a young age, I was asked to babysit my auntie's children. During the late hours of the evening, she arrived but was not alone. Instead of packing my things to go home, my sense was to quickly grab the children. The 4 or 5 men that followed my auntie home raped her. I had to protect the children and hide. I could not save my auntie. I only heard her cries. Today is the first time that I have ever shared this story. She died at a young age. The perpetrators were never prosecuted. A majority of our girls have struggled with sexual and domestic violence, not once, but repeatedly. My question for Congress was, and always has been, why did you not protect me?
Why didn't you protect my family?
My auntie.
My mother.
My daughter.
Me.
I am urging Congress to uphold the U.S. Constitution.
Honor our treaty agreements.
Recognize our sovereignty.
Restore our jurisdiction.
Thank you.
What do you need, Deb?
Need?
You had anything to eat?
I'm fine.
You've been at it for days now, and I haven't seen you eat a thing.
I'm not hungry.
I bought you a sandwich.
What do you think of this sentence? The tribal jurisdiction provision in the reauthorization of VAWA 2013 recognizes the rights to our Native women to be free of violence and abuse, as well as the inherent sovereign authority of tribes to protect their own citizens.
Sounds good to me.
Too many commas.
I think it's fine.
People stop listening when you use too many commas.
I don't think people hear commas.
I hear commas. I hear commas all the time, and they bother me. You're a lawyer. Didn't you spend years studying where to place commas?
I was tribal police before law school, and we never use commas. Now, my dad, he was obsessed with commas. Whenever he wrote an opinion or an order, he'd spend hours revising, deleting commas, adding commas. He always said judicial orders must command respect.
He was a tribal judge?
I never got to sleep in on a Saturday morning because he would drag me out of bed and throw me in the car. He would take me with him to court, and on the way, he'd make me read. Now, back then, to have a legal case, it was a printout of a book. So we'd drive, and sometimes it was several hours, and he'd say, "Okay, read this to me." And I'd read the case to him, and he'd say, "What do you think that means?" He was teaching me at a very young age to respect the law.
I thought about going to law school.
Don't.
You went.
I had to.
Your dad made you go.
You all don't have the TV on?
No,
What the heck are you doing in here?
we were talking.
For crying out loud, turn on C-SPAN.
In a minute, I need to concentrate.
They voted.
What?
We won.
Oh my God!
Not 68.
We just passed the Senate.
Thank you!
Okay, we're hugging.
We won!
We still have to pass the House.
I gotta call my husband and my kids.
You didn't think we'd do it.
I didn't think we had the votes.
We didn't until the last second.
Now, how long did it take for me to convince you this campaign would be worth it?
I didn't need any convincing. You had me at OCO.
They removed Alaska.
What?
Alaska's been carved out.
Section 904.
Jurisdiction is limited to crimes committed in Indian country.
What's that mean?
It's a reference to Veneti.
Supreme Court case.
In 1998, the court declared that Indian country no longer exists in Alaska.
Okay, but there are 229 federally recognized tribes in Alaska.
And now none of them have jurisdiction.
Well, except Metlakatla.
One tribe.
The other 228 are out.
Leahy told me they were in.
Murray said they wouldn't be left out.
Someone lied to us.
Murkowski?
Talk to Begich.
Unbelievable.
I have to call Nettie.
I remember when the Supreme Court decided Veneti. I was devastated. How can the Supreme Court say there's no Indian country in Alaska when I'm standing right here on the same soil that my grandparents stood on, and their grandparents, and their parents before them? This has always been our country. We are still here, but according to the United States Supreme Court, we don't exist. My family has always lived in Tetlin. I was born in Glen Allen, and I was almost put up for adoption because I was half white. A Christian family in Wasilla took me in to stay with them until I was 1 year old, and then my grandfather fought to bring me back to Tetlin. I am the very first half from Tetlin, so in the eyes of the whites, I can't be Native. They are always looking for ways to make us disappear. But I know who I am. I am Athabaskan from the village of Tetlin, just like my grandfathers and their grandfathers before them. I fish grayling, I hunt caribou, I pick berries from the same field, I speak the same language, just like my grandmothers, my mother, and my relatives. I have the right to seek protection from my tribal government. I started doing this work in 1978. My mother died as a result of domestic violence, and her husband got away with it. Our representative in Congress, they tell us the Supreme Court has stated legally there is no Indian country in Alaska. But for Native women in Alaska, Indian country isn't a legal or even an academic question. It's a matter of life and death.
Murkowski says it was a drafting error?
It's definitely an error.
Then why didn't you take it out?
I couldn't.
You're on the committee.
The state lobbied hard on this one.
Well, what was their position?
We need to protect states' rights.
You mean Alaska's rights?
Look, I tried to get it out, but we didn't have agreement.
We?
I'm not the only senator from Alaska.
I'm not talking to the press.
Just one comment.
I said no.
Senator Murkowski refused to comment.
Off the record.
Fine.
It was a drafting error.
Drafting error?
I didn't know it was there.
Who put the Indian country reference to Veneti in there?
I'm not sure.
You didn't know the bill contained a special carve-out for your state?
Hi, Terry.
I told you I don't know.
Nettie,
Do you plan to fix it?
Alaska's not included.
It's not that simple.
Not included.
They carved you out.
Why?
Alaska's different. We all know there's no Indian country left in Alaska.
Tom, it's good to see you.
Congrats on passing the Senate.
Oh, thank you.
I hear you're representing the Eastern Band.
Yes?
You forget you're from Oklahoma?
Don't worry, I still got my twang.
It's good to hear.
So, how do we get Leahy Crapo through the House with tribal jurisdiction in it?
I'm not sure we can.
No, that's not what I wanted to hear.
Boehner assigned Cantor to VAWA, and he's opposed to sovereignty.
Based on what?
I think the Constitution.
Now, where in the Constitution does it say tribes no longer have jurisdiction?
You don't have to convince me. You have to convince Cantor.
So what does he think?
Now it's going to be difficult.
But he thinks we can do it.
He's a congressman, not a prophet.
Someone needs sleep.
Or a Red Bull.
We need to go where we're most powerful.
Our survivors.
Hard to tell a survivor she doesn't deserve justice.
Our stories are powerful.
Do you think they'd agree?
To come up here?
Lisa Bruner would.
Yes.
She stood up and spoke out in '03 when McCain and the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs wanted to ignore this issue.
What about Shara Giles?
Yes.
Melissa Merrick.
Diane Milich.
Her story is very powerful.
They all are.
But how do we get them here?
Let me see what I can do.
At first, I wasn't sure.
What would my family think of me?
What would my tribe think of me?
Why me?
Shouldn't they be asking someone else?
And so when she asked me,
When Terry said,
Will you come to D.C.?
will you speak out?
I really had to think if that was going to be right for me.
Would I be comfortable doing that?
I was mainly thinking about protecting my 3 daughters, especially my youngest one. She had no idea that I'd ever had to live my life in such a way. Maybe she's seen these kinds of things on TV or in movies, but she didn't know these things happen in real life, to real people that she knows.
I wanted to protect her.
Shield her,
I didn't want her to know.
but I can't shield her from everything.
She's already dating.
She could end up in a relationship with a young man who's not enrolled.
A non-Indian.
And if he were to mistreat her?
Would I be okay knowing that I didn't do whatever I could to help keep her safe?
No. So I said yes.
I agreed to go to D.C.
I agreed to share my story.
But I was diagnosed with lupus last week, and I start chemotherapy in just a few days.
Oh, Diane, I don't know what to say.
I'm not asking for sympathy.
If you can't come,
I'm coming. I have a serious illness, but this is important.
thank you. This will make a difference for all Native women.
I never told Terry this, but I didn't agree to share my story for her, or even for the other women.
I did this for my family.
I did this for my auntie.
I
did this for the next generation.
I did this for my daughter. My daughter was raped this past summer. Even though they wore bandanas, my daughter recognized their white skin and their blonde hair. They were doing what I call hunting on our reservation. Non-natives know they can come onto our lands and rape us with impunity. My daughter was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. She didn't come and tell me right away. She washed and she hid it. That summer, we had another little girl who was raped, and nothing was done. The state did nothing, so she hung herself. Our suicide rate on our reservation is quite huge, as it is in all of Indian country. So my daughter, hearing all of the stories about this little girl being raped and her death, she finally broke and told me what happened to her. My daughters know better. They don't go try and party. We know the dangers of our environment, and they know that. And they know that we're walking bullseyes. We're not just targets, we're walking bullseyes. And so she went out in the middle of the night to go find my niece. She didn't want my niece to get in trouble for being out late, because she would have. And as my daughter walked down the road, 4 white guys in a black SUV with tan leather interior were trying to get her into the vehicle. And she said no. She just kept walking. And this is the only biggest town that we have on a reservation, population maybe 1,400. And as she's walking, they're getting more persistent. She takes off running. And they chase her down. 2 guys. They jumped out of the vehicle. They drug her to it. And so as one was driving, 2 held her down, and the 4th one raped her. And they had bandanas on over their faces, but she's seen their white skin and their blue eyes and their blonde hair. And when they were done with her, they threw her out by the bridge. As a mom, that more than took the wind out of me. That slammed me to the earth with such ungodly speed. And all the measures that I had tried to protect them, they didn't work. My daughter isn't an animal that is hunted. She's a human being.
Well, if it isn't the gentleman from Oklahoma.
I hope I'm not intruding.
No. My 3 o'clock was canceled. Sit down.
Oh, it won't be long.
VAWA's making me a popular man. Joe Biden's beating down my door, and every woman in the house wants to tell me what she thinks.
Well, they're for it.
Not all of them.
You know where I stand.
I do. And I wish I could help you, but I've got 2 committee chairmen blocking the Senate bill, and they won't budge.
Hastings. Yeah, well.
I'll tell you this. If you can convince Hastings to vote for tribal jurisdiction, I'll send it to the floor.
Well, you and I both know that will never happen.
Feel free to come back to me if it does.
Cantor's bill removes jurisdiction and replaces it with federal delegation.
Well, that won't work.
But it will pass.
What if you drafted a bill?
Me?
Well, you're a popular guy. People take you seriously.
Not on Indian issues. Well, folks will just say that's another one of Tom Cole's Indian bills.
No, I disagree.
If I draft the bill, it'll be dead in the water.
Well, we don't have a lot of options here. It's not like you can ask a Democrat to draft this.
Ask Isa.
Daryl Issa?
He's Lebanese, not Chickasaw. It's like a whole different tribe.
Well, seriously, why Issa?
Well, he's a strong supporter of the tribes, and he's chair of the Oversight Committee.
That committee has nothing to do with this.
Exactly. That committee exists purely to torture the president. I mean, he's overseeing all the investigations that look into Obama, including Benghazi. So we got ourselves a bona fide, respected Republican partisan. If Daryl Issa's name is first on the bill, folks will look at it.
Okay, fine. Well, could you just check with him and see if he'd be willing to do it?
I already did. He said yes.
Did you have a nice Christmas? Hard to believe it's 2013.
Time goes by fast around here.
I didn't go home for the holidays. Stayed here and just worked straight through. I figure I'll go home and see my kids after we win the House. There will be plenty of time for family when we win.
Cantor refused to put it to vote.
What?
He let the bill expire.
The bill's dead?
We'll reintroduce it. Leahy already has a draft going.
What good will that do?
If we can pass it before the end of January, it'll be back in the House by the 1st of February.
We could pass it in the Senate every year for 50 years. That won't get it through the House.
I know you're disappointed.
I'm going home.
Deborah?
I haven't seen my kids in 3 months.
This isn't defeat.
What do I tell my tribe? I haven't been to a council meeting in months, and now I'm going to lose my re-election.
You tell them Patty Murray says 1 month from now, we'll have VAWA 2013 passed in the Senate.
And then what?
You have momentum. Don't stop now.
Murray and Leahy think they can have a vote by the end of January.
That's fast.
Well, they have the votes.
And we don't. Tell them to slow down.
We have momentum.
90 miles per hour down a dead-end road gets you nowhere.
We just have to convince Cantor to put it to a vote.
And he's convinced it's unconstitutional.
What's unconstitutional about recognizing a tribe's jurisdiction?
Oliphant.
Are you kidding me? Have you read Oliphant?
100 times. It still doesn't make sense to me. I mean, how do you explain the court's decision that after hundreds of years of sovereign existence, a sovereign existence that predates the United States Constitution, that all of a sudden, in 1978, tribal governments lost their sovereignty? Poof. I guess it just disappeared.
No, I used to watch my dad preside over tribal court.
My great-grandfather was clerk of our Chickasaw Supreme Court.
Yeah, we prosecuted everyone, Indian, non-Indian, black, white, French, Chinese.
If you committed a crime on the reservation, the tribe could prosecute you.
When I was in college, my sister Rachel, she was working at the casino over in Red Rock. And this guy, when my sister finished her shift, he followed her into the parking lot and he raped her. And when he was done with her, he left her on the ground and drove off. But she saw his license plate. Joseph Jefferson, a 34-year-old white male, chemical engineer living in Nichols Hills. She got his license plate.
You ask your sister to speak. People need to hear her story.
She killed herself. 6 months after the rape, when we figured out our tribe didn't have jurisdiction to prosecute him, and he came back to the casino and started stalking her. So you're just gonna accept this?
What do you want me to do?
Prosecute this man. You're a judge. Issue an order, have the police arrest him.
I can't.
We have his license plate.
Dennis.
We know his name, where he works. We know where he lives.
White. We don't have jurisdiction.
Oliphant?
Read it.
I'm not a lawyer.
I said read it.
We granted
Certiorari.
I don't even know how to pronounce.
Read the full sentence.
We granted certiorari to decide whether Indian tribal courts have criminal jurisdiction over non-Indians. We decide that they do not.
What do you think that means?
Meant I had to go to law school.
You read the entire opinion?
Yeah, my dad made me.
Read the last sentence.
Finally, we are not unaware of the prevalence of non-Indian crime on today's reservations, which the tribes forcefully argue requires the ability to try non-Indians. But these are considerations for Congress to weigh in deciding whether Indian tribes should be authorized to try non-Indians.
And what do you think that means?
Congress has the constitutional power to recognize the inherent sovereignty in Indian tribes.
You go back and you tell Patty Murray that if she and Leahy can get through the Senate, I'll do whatever the hell it takes to pass the House.
Leahy's reintroducing the bill on Monday.
Murray thinks they'll have it passed by February 1st.
Isn't that a bit fast?
She thinks we have momentum.
But we need buzz in the press.
I know a reporter at the Times.
Would he be willing to write about VAWA?
She.
Maybe you could ask her.
Miss Milich, thank you for taking my call. I'm with the Times,
Oh, the Aspen Times?
the New York Times.
Oh,
Dennis Whitehawk gave me your name.
he's been doing that a lot lately.
I'm writing an article about the tribal jurisdiction provisions in proposed a reauthorization of VAWA. Would you be willing to share your story?
I was born on the Southern Ute Reservation. My mother was a Southern Ute, and my dad was a first-generation Yugoslavian. When I was 36, I married a white man, believing he would treat me the same way my father treated my mother. He moved onto my reservation and lived with me, but we weren't married for very long before he became violent. The brutality increased after I left and filed for a divorce and the order of protection. One day, after the Southern Ute Tribal Court awarded my order of protection, I was at work when I saw him pull up in our red truck. My ex-husband walked inside our office and told me, "You promised until death do us part, so death it shall be." He was armed with a 9mm gun. If not for my very brave coworker, I would not be alive today. My coworker prevented my murder by pushing me out of harm's way. My coworker took the bullet in his shoulder. The shooting took place at a Federal Bureau of Land Management land site where we both worked. The jurisdictional issue was so complicated that after the shooting, my Southern Ute Tribal Police, the Colorado State Patrol, our county sheriffs, the city police, the federal agents, all 6 agencies were standing there with measuring tapes and maps.
I've got 5.
I got 4.
This is clearly federal.
It's at least 6 inches away.
Take a look. The bullet landed on federal.
Now, the gun was fired from state.
Yeah, but where's the body? Not in the state.
It took hours just to decide who had jurisdiction.
Look, if you want it, take it.
Nah, we don't need feds leftovers.
This is small potatoes for
Southern
feds.
says they want to prosecute.
Yeah, but they don't have the jurisdiction.
The district attorney decided that the 6th Judicial District of Colorado would prosecute the case.
We like to offer a plea agreement.
What's on the table?
Attempted voluntary manslaughter.
How about aggravated driving under revocation?
For driving without a license.
He didn't have his license when he was arrested.
But he tried to kill someone.
He's a first-time offender.
He has a history of domestic violence.
On the reservation. You and I both know that doesn't count. Get him for aggravated driving under revocation, and you can still look tough. Show you took a stand against someone who put the lives of your police force in danger.
No one ever asked me, the victim, what I needed to feel safe.
I'm telling you, aggravated driving under revocation, and then we can all go home happy.
Okay.
My tribe wanted to prosecute, but because of Oliphant, they couldn't. It was like his attempt to shoot me and the shooting of my coworker Didn't happen. In the end, he was right. The law couldn't touch him. He was above the law.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story.
We passed the Senate.
I knew we would.
We got 78.
That's 10 more than last year.
10 Republicans switched over.
That's amazing.
Diane's story in the Times.
It was powerful.
That's where those 10 votes came from.
Huh. So now we just need to win in the House.
Lord save us.
I need some caffeine.
I got coffee.
Great.
Terry doesn't need caffeine.
Oh, well, you can have hers.
Dennis doesn't drink coffee.
You don't drink coffee?
Oh, you know that stuff's bad for you.
I also brought bagels.
Dennis doesn't eat bagels.
Oh.
He only eats hippie granola stuff.
They're called Cliff Bars, and they're really good for you. No corn syrup, no processed ingredients.
He went to law school in Northern California.
All right, so we need to figure out the schedule for this week.
Juana's setting up a meeting with the Black Caucus.
Thank God for Gwen Moore.
You said you'd meet with Pelosi?
I did?
Yes, we discussed this.
Okay.
I'll be stalking Kathy McMorris Rogers.
Well, what about Betty McCollum?
On my list.
I got McHenry and Denham.
Paul Cook?
Talking to him tomorrow morning.
Who's checking in with Isa?
That's me.
Don't forget, you've got Cole.
I think you got me.
Well, whatever you Oklahoma boys share, it's special, I'm sure.
So who's got the press?
I'm with the Washington Post.
The Los Angeles Times.
Do you have a minute?
Yes,
I read Diane Milich's story.
it's powerful.
I'd like to hear yours.
Why are you here?
To speak out,
To share my story.
to stop the silence.
Why are you advocating for jurisdiction?
1 out of 3 Native women will be raped in her lifetime.
60% of Native women will be assaulted in their lifetime.
Our women?
Our children.
We're not safe.
What happened?
My husband tried to shoot me.
He threatened to drown me.
My coworker took the bullet in his shoulder.
Unbelievable.
67% of violent crimes committed against Native women are committed by non-Native.
They come to our reservations because they know they can harm us.
They know they are safe.
They're protected.
By the law.
Did you call the police?
Doesn't help. They can't do anything.
They don't have jurisdiction.
On your reservation?
According to the Supreme Court.
Because I am a Native woman living on my tribe's lands.
The laws won't protect me.
What kind of message does that send to our women?
I know what message it sent to me.
I don't understand.
If the violence is so bad,
If you aren't safe on your own reservation,
if he lives in your home,
your home is dangerous,
why don't you leave? Wouldn't the laws of the state protect you if you leave your reservation?
My great-great-great-great-grandfather was Wayagadoga, or Standing Wolf. During the time of the removal, the soldiers came to take him and his family to force them to walk the Trail of Tears. At that time, a white man named George Hayes was living with the Cherokees. Wayagadoga asked Hayes what he could do to avoid going west and be allowed to remain in his homeland. Hayes advised him to save up all his food rations when he saw the opportunity to break away and make his way back home. But to be caught escaping meant severe punishment or even death. One day, several weeks later, Hayes was out working in his yard when he saw a small group of people approaching on the horizon. It was Standing Wolf, his wife, and several other Cherokees. His wife held a small newborn baby. Hayes asked Standing Wolf what the baby's name was. And Standing Wolf told him that his new son was named Waya Uchanta, or Come Back Wolf, because that was the only wish in their hearts, just to come back home. This is why I and my grandparents before me came to be in the mountains of western North Carolina. The Cherokee elders and wise ones say that we've always been there. We always will be there. It's believed that we were given our home there in those mountains by the Creator. Since it was given to us by the Creator, only He can take it from us. So did I ever think of leaving Cherokee?
No.
Not once.
Never.
We are still here.
This is my home.
I will never leave my home.
Kathy McMorris Rogers. Well, I didn't expect to see you today.
I'm on my way to the ENC.
Well, thanks for stopping by.
Believe me, I'd rather be visiting with you than sitting in a committee.
What can I do for you?
I met with some of the women, and I heard their stories.
They're very powerful.
How do we get the press?
It's up to Cantor.
I mean, how do we convince him to put jurisdiction to vote?
Well, I've tried.
He's stubborn as hell.
I'm sure it'd help if he heard from you directly.
Let me see what I can do.
I think I know what you're here to discuss.
Then let's discuss it.
I'm not putting it to a vote.
Did you read the New York Times article?
Are you kidding me? I
I
have
hate-
standards.
I hate the press as much as you do.
You're the one quoting it.
This is about perception. 53% of voters in the last election were women. Exit polls show that Obama held the 10-point gender gap over Romney.
I've heard the numbers.
If you refuse to put VAWA to a vote now, like you did last year, there will be consequences for all of us.
I'm here because I don't want to have this conversation over email.
We need a vote.
You think you can just pull the camel's nose under the tent?
No one's nose is going under any tents.
Oh, they got your nose, that's for sure.
What's that supposed to mean?
You're supposed to be our guy working with them.
I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm their guy working with you. My great-great-great-grandfather was one of the last to travel the Chickasaw Trail of Tears. He was only 14. He walked 80 miles. From 1837 to 1851, the federal government moved everyone. We lost everything except our sovereignty. After we got to our new home in Indian Territory, my great-great-grandfather served as the clerk of the Chickasaw Supreme Court. And after him, my great-grandfather served as the last Chickasaw treasurer before Oklahoma became a state. And my mother was the first Native American woman ever elected to the state Senate in Oklahoma. I come from a long line of Chickasaw leaders, men and women who have served not only their sovereign tribal government, as I now serve mine, but also the state of Oklahoma and the United States. I have a lot of respect for this government, this sovereign government, and how it works. And it works because people vote. They vote in the presidential election, and they vote in their state elections. And here in the House, we vote. When a bill passes, it passes. And when it doesn't get enough votes, it fails. But no one has to guess whether the majority of the citizens' representatives were for or against a bill when there's a vote. That's all we're asking for. That's all we want. Please, let us have the vote.
They're voting!
I remember where I was.
I remember what I was doing.
I remember what I was thinking.
And I will never forget.
I was on the floor of the House.
At my home in Fairfax.
On my reservation.
In Cherokee. In Alaska.
Watching CNN.
C-SPAN.
Facebook.
Watching the vote.
Working for votes.
I couldn't breathe.
I was so nervous.
All I could do was pray.
What's the vote?
30.
We got 30?
We need 218.
We need your vote.
You got my vote.
31.
Thank you.
62.
My whole life.
I've dreamed of this.
85.
I prayed for this.
114.
You got my vote, Tom.
Thank you.
115.
Everything depends on this.
What if we lose?
We can't lose.
Not an option.
201.
201.
Oh my God.
I just prayed.
To Creator.
215.
Holy smokes!
216.
We got this.
217.
Is this for real?
218.
We did it.
218.
218.
They're still coming.
More votes.
235.
246.
250.
285.
286.
286.
286.
286 votes.
I couldn't believe it.
Unbelievable.
I had to call Jax.
Terry texted me.
I just started texting.
I started crying.
I could hardly say who I was texting. I was crying so hard.
I had to scream.
I scared my neighbors.
I did a victory dance.
I prayed for my sisters. It just seemed unreal.
It felt like a dream.
It was amazing.
It was humbling.
It was a miracle.
What about Alaska?
Next time. I promise.
Why were we left out?
Miss Milich,
This is Diane.
I'm calling on behalf of Obama.
Am I getting punked?
No, he would like to invite you to attend the signing ceremony for VAWA.
When is it?
We need you here tomorrow.
I have to ask my doctor.
Vice President Biden would like you to introduce him.
To who?
To everyone at the ceremony, the President and Vice President would like you to invite you to share your story with the nation.
What should I wear?
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today, for this is a very important event, the signing of the Reauthorization of Violence Against Women Act. I am very honored to introduce you to our first speaker of the afternoon. She has traveled all the way here from the reservation in Colorado. Please welcome Diane Milich.
Good afternoon. My name is Diane Milich, and I am a citizen of the Southern Ute Indian tribe. My mother is known as Bear Woman. She is also known as Arlene Weaver Milich and is also a member of the Southern Ute Indian tribe in Colorado. The VAWA being signed today would have allowed my tribe to arrest and prosecute my abuser. When this act is signed into law, VAWA will finally reach Native women like me.
And me.
And me.
And my daughter.
If the Violence Against Women Act tribal provisions had existed 15 years ago, my story would be very different.
My story would be different.
My daughter's story will be different.
This act,
The tribal jurisdiction provision.
It's a step in the right direction.
It's an enormous victory.
but it only covers domestic violence.
And protection orders.
It doesn't cover rape.
It doesn't cover murder.
It doesn't cover what happened to my daughter.
It protects me.
It protects me.
It protects me.
It doesn't protect me.
It excludes 228 federally recognized tribes in Alaska.
Why were we cut out? I read about your people before I met you. I've never known anyone who was Cherokee, but I read about your Trail of Tears in 1839. I read about how the federal government took your homes and forced you to walk thousands of miles. I read that many got sick and died. Everyone keeps saying, Nettie, we can't include Alaska in this bill. Sorry, Nettie, we'll protect Alaska Native women next time. Sorry, Nettie. Alaska is different. What makes us different? Is it because what happened to your people in 1839 didn't happen to us until 1959? Because Congress passed the Dawes Act and gave our land to white settlers in 1887, but didn't pass ANCSA and gave away our lands until 1971? Is it because the Supreme Court took away your jurisdiction in 1978, but didn't take ours until it was decided Vinitae in 1998? Please, someone, explain to me, how are we different? Because from where I stand, I see our stories are the same.
You aren't different.
We are the same.
And we stand with you.
VAWA 2013 is just the start.
But we have more work to do.
Until this government recognizes our tribe's sovereign authority to protect all of our Native women,
None of us are safe.
Until this government recognizes the rights of our Alaska Native sisters.
None of us are safe.
VAWA is a miracle.
A spiritual miracle.
But it's just the beginning.
It's just the sliver.
The first sliver of a full moon.
I first want to say thank you to all of the actors and the director and, of course, Mary Kathryn. We sometimes at the law school have trouble making the law come alive and have people see its actual effects in the world. And here, what we actually see is the effects of not having law as well. And so I just want to say thank you to you and to everyone else. It's an honor for me to be able to introduce these three creative and quite brilliant Native women lawyers. Maggie McKinley is a Climenko Fellow and a lecturer on law at Harvard Law School. She serves as co-principal investigator of the Language of Lobbying project at the University of Chicago. Her scholarship examines the ways that minorities participate in lawmaking process in democracies, with a special focus on lobbying and petitioning. And I can say that I think she single-handedly is creating an entire new field of law, and I think it's an amazing, very important and amazing project that she's working on. She's conducted a field study of federal lobbyists during the campaign to reauthorize VAWA. Her mother is a citizen of the Fond du Lac Band of Minnesota Ojibwe, and her father is Irish Catholic from the Bronx. Angela Riley is currently the Oneida Indian Nation Visiting Professor of Law at Harvard Law School. This semester, she's a professor of law at UCLA School of Law, as well as the director of UCLA's Joint Program in Law and American Indian Studies. Her research focuses on issues related to indigenous peoples' rights, with a particular emphasis on cultural property and native governance. I should say good native governance, which is the name of her her article. In 2003, she became the first woman and the youngest justice of the Supreme Court of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation of Oklahoma. 2010, she was elected as Chief Justice. She now serves as co-chair for the United Nations Indigenous Peoples Partnership Policy Board and is an evidentiary hearing officer for the Morongo Band of Mission Indians. And I have to say, she was my student, and I feel a particular pride in her accomplishments. There's a Jewish term which is nachas, which is a term that parents use about their children. It means the sort of unmitigated joy that you get in talking about your children. So I feel nachas for Angela. And finally, Mary Kathryn Nagle, who I've just met today for the first time. Mary Kathryn is obviously an accomplished Native playwright and lawyer. She's the author of the play that we just saw. In addition to practicing and publishing... In addition to practicing and publishing academic articles on Indian law, Mary Kathryn has begun a project of telling the stories of Indian country relating to law and policy. She's using art as a way to bring to people the reality of the legal system and the situation of Indian nations in the United States, and especially Native women. In addition to Sliver of Full Moon, she has documented the struggle of the Sac and Fox Nation to reclaim the body of Jim Thorpe. And she has, I didn't know that she created a reenactment of the first federal court decision to declare natives as persons under federal law. Get that? That's kind of amazing. She's a citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma and a very creative advocate on behalf of Indian country, obviously. And it's a great honor for me to be able to introduce him.
I just want to begin with a few questions for this panel, and then I'd like to turn the act of posing questions over to the audience so we can get some wider discussion going on there. After listening to this reading, thank you again. At some level, there are some obvious ways to go with this question, but let me just pose it just most frankly so you can speak to the issues, all of you. Where do we go from here? Does the story of Sliver tell us anything about what changes are necessary in statute, in jurisprudence, in constitution making or amendment making to make tribal sovereignty a reality, the reality that it should be? And what are some of those changes, and not simply identifying those, what are strategies to make them happen? I'd like the three of you to potentially reflect on that.
Could I offer a quick point of clarification? Because I think this also, this is something in the play that I thought was really powerful, but the language wasn't always as precise as lawyers love it to be. So I just want to, so as far as, I know, I'm sorry. So as far as making sovereignty a reality, I don't believe that one government can tell another government what sovereignty is or create that government sovereignty. I think sovereignty exists in Indian country separate from the federal government and whatever the federal government recognizes. So the distinction that I'd like to make in this conversation that I offer to the panel, and I hope that we can agree on, is that the federal government recognizes tribal sovereignty. It does not create it, nor does it get rid of it when it's gone.
Angela or Mary Kathryn?
Sure, thank you. Well, Maggie, I think we're on the same wavelength. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I just had a couple of points to raise, and then really want to hear more from everyone else. And I want to say thank you to everyone for inviting me here and for this wonderful experience, and of course for the performers and survivors for presenting. Thank you. Yes. I think there are the play raises for me a few critical points. So the first one is one that Maggie already made, and that is that, tribal sovereignty really is a reality. Our sovereignty is inherent. We have it, we do exercise it, and we live it. We have had moments in time where it has been curbed by either the U.S. Supreme Court or by the Congress, and things like the reauthorization of VAWA did not give us sovereignty. It limited a restriction on our inherent sovereignty that was already there. In terms of thinking about other places to go with VAWA, some of these things are touched on in the play, and I've been doing some research around the way the cases have been playing out at the tribal level and in the tribal courts. And so some of the really obvious places for expansions and to really make the law have the kind of impact that it needs to have to really make families safe on reservations. So one critical place is to extend it to child abuse. In many of these instances, children were involved in cases at all three tribes that prosecuted defendants during the pilot project period. Children were involved in numerous of those cases. The crimes against the children can't be prosecuted under VAWA, so they have to be referred to another sovereign. Sometimes they get prosecuted, sometimes they don't. So that's one obvious place for extension. But as you heard in the play, there are also a lot of things that VAWA doesn't apply to, including situations involving strangers. There has to be a particular kind of relationship with the defendant and the reservation or the victim. And so it limits the kind of stranger situations we see and that have particularly been going on in some of the Northern Plains areas with the increase in extractive industry and non-Indians coming onto reservations, committing crimes against Native women, but not having enough of a nexus to be prosecuted under the statute. And the final thing I think that's just really important is to educate people more about tribal courts. During the pilot project period, there were 3 tribes that prosecuted defendants under VAWA. There were 26 total cases. Of those cases, 1 went all the way to a jury trial, and that defendant had a jury panel of all Indians except for 1 person who was non-Indian. And that non-Indian defendant, the first and only person to be prosecuted and tried all the way to a jury since Oliphant in 1978, was acquitted. He wasn't convicted. And I think many people feel that this is, whatever the infirmities may or may not have been in that particular case, it just demonstrates, for one thing, that non-Indians can and do get fair treatment in tribal courts. Tribal courts want to protect the rights of defendants just like state courts and just like federal courts do. And the other thing that sort of is interesting is of all the people that were prosecuted during the pilot project period, not one of them filed a writ of habeas corpus. So they all had the opportunity to go to the federal court and say, my rights are being violated in tribal court. I want to be tried elsewhere, where I want to challenge the tribe's authority over me. And none of them did, and none of them wanted to. I've spoken with people who had contact with those defendants, and they were really happy with their treatment in tribal court, which they felt was actually much more respectful and fair than a lot of the treatment they'd had outside of tribal courts. So those are, I think, the main points I wanted to just emphasize, and then I'll turn it over to my co-panelists.
Sure. Well, you've heard a lot from me tonight, and I have a lot to say. But, I think kind of adding to what Angela and Maggie have said, which are some really excellent points, to add something new to the conversation that hasn't already been said, I would just point to the fact that this play does talk about this huge victory we had in 2013, which is really amazing. And as Maggie points out, our tribes were sovereign before 1492. They were sovereign after 1776, after 1887. They're still sovereign today. We don't have to ask for sovereignty. We inherently have it. And yet we keep having to defend it in the United States Supreme Court. And why is that? And there's a huge case to look to right now. And it's a bit alarming that we can be celebrating this victory in 2013 in VAWA from Congress, and that we have a United States president who recognizes that our tribes are sovereign and respects that. And on December 7th, our United States Supreme Court will hear a case that really goes to the heart of tribal sovereignty in the Dollar General case. And I think it's a case that highlights a lot of the issues that have been discussed tonight, because in that case, to try to briefly summarize the facts, Dollar General operates a store that on tribal trust lands in Mississippi on the reservation of the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. And they entered into a contractual arrangement with the tribe whereby they leased their lands, and they also agreed in the contract to subject themselves to tribal jurisdiction. Well, they also agreed to participate in a tribal youth employment program. And during the course of employing a summer intern from the tribe, a 13-year-old boy, the non-Indian supervisor in the store sexually assaulted the tribal youth 2 times. And now we know, because of Oliphant in 1978, his tribe cannot prosecute that crime. And also, despite the fact of the reauthorization in 2013 and the restoration of jurisdiction, there's no jurisdiction for crimes committed against our children. And so the tribe has no criminal jurisdiction, according to the Supreme Court, to prosecute this crime. The federal government hasn't done anything. Of course, they could, under the framework the Supreme Court has created, they could prosecute, and they have not. And so the only thing the tribe can offer is civil court jurisdiction, which is something that a lot of other sovereigns, like our state and federal sovereigns, also offer. And the idea being that if you are abused and battered, you can go into a civil court and file a tort lawsuit against the individual, the entity that battered you or hurt you. And in this case, the parents of the youth have filed a lawsuit in tribal court saying, please, Dollar General, we think you need to pay for our child's pain and suffering because our child was abused on your watch at your store by your employee, and you didn't stop it. And that's a whole, very common theory of law in terms of negligent supervision of your employee when there's been a sexual assault. And Dollar General's real argument has been to date, and it hasn't progressed to the merits, because their only argument has been the tribal court doesn't have jurisdiction over us. We're not Indian. And it's going all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. On December 7th, the Supreme Court will hear the arguments. And if you read their brief, it's like Oliphant all over again. First of all, they cite Oliphant, I think, I lost count, maybe 50 times. And they are asking for nothing less than the Supreme Court. It's kind of like they're saying, Supreme Court, you did it in Oliphant. You know how to do it. You already took away their criminal jurisdiction. Now take away their civil. And what's really inherent in their message is that tribal courts are inferior, which, as Angela pointed out, they're simply not. They're simply not. And so I think it's alarming that we can be making progress on certain fronts, and that we're threatened with retrogression on other fronts. And so I just wanted to draw that out as another point of conversation.
Just to build a bit on Mary Kathryn's point, something that is interesting, or a little bit sad but still interesting, is that Indian country has not had a whole lot of success in the Supreme Court for the last 40 years. And that's saying it very lightly. There haven't been a whole lot of successes, and Oliphant was issued before I was born. And so for my lifetime, we have not seen many successes anywhere, actually, not even in the Congress. And so I think what Sliver captures and what the VAWA reauthorization can communicate on what happens next is, first, it is hope that something can be done for a whole generation of women and natives who have not seen anything go their way with respect to the federal government. And so that's one thing. It tells us that the possible is possible for once. It also gives us an avenue for enacting that change. So the mechanism by which this recognition of tribal court jurisdiction happened was through the Congress. It was through lobbying. It was through legislative advocacy. It was not through litigation in the courts, which is lost and lost and lost and lost. And in this area, I think not just understanding the law is helpful, but understanding those mechanisms so we can start to open them for future progressive work. Because what's happened here is we've lucked out because VAWA was passing through the Congress to be able to latch onto it. This is an institution that has passed fewer laws and done fewer things and is completely paralyzed in so many ways. And this is our only avenue for change. Not only do we need to think about Indian country, we also need to think about the Congress and how we can make that a place to where our voices will be heard and real change can make it through, not just a sliver, but real statutory change, real legislative change that can make our courts. Thank you.
Joe, would you like to?
Yeah, I wanted to just say that one of the problems that we see is that the Supreme Court issues rulings and they just assume the Congress will fix whatever problems they create. And I agree with what Maggie just said. We hope that we can get Congress to do things, but realistically, it's very hard to get Congress to do things. And the Supreme Court sort of puts it off on Congress, you fix it. The Congress puts it off on the court and says, you tell us what tribal sovereignty is, and if there's no tribal sovereignty, well, that's not our problem. And they're both sort of putting responsibility on someone else, not themselves. And this problem exists in the situations where, the law that was passed, the VAWA of 2013, did a lot of good things, but there are a lot of Indian nations that are not going to get jurisdiction under that law because there are certain requirements to get jurisdiction. And for those, for women in those nations, what they need, if it's not going to happen that there'll be jurisdiction, what they need is better law enforcement by the federal government, and in some cases by the state governments, depending on the local. There are several states where the states do the law enforcement. And everyone is refusing to take responsibility. And this is one of the things that, to me, is why works of art are so crucial, because it's very easy for people to say, it's not my problem. Someone else should take care of it. And the federal prosecutors say, we don't have enough money, we're not close, we're not near where the crimes are, we just don't have enough resources, it's not the thing that we're going to focus on. And they're sort of saying it's the Congress's fault. And the result of all of this is that you wind up having people that are left vulnerable. And it's works of art, I think, that actually can help us actually understand the significance of the failure of people who should take responsibility to take responsibility.
Thank you. I just want to, one more question to sort of extend upon that theme before we go to the audience, which is that, as Professor Singer just sort of put it, if you don't mind, I give it this reading, that basically this issue has become something of a hot potato passed back and forth between Congress and the courts. And Sliver does give us hope in that respect. And one of the things that I thought was so powerful about it was going back and forth between the stories of survivors and the nitty-gritty of the legislative process. I mean, I don't have a stopwatch there, but a lot of this takes place in Washington, right, where these talks are occurring. And so, given that Congress needs to be persuaded, needs to be nudged, needs to be shoved, what can we do, the Academy, artists, those who are the audience for Sliver as well as the actors for it, to bring about pressure on Congress, do that? I get some lessons, we get some lessons, the role of the media, right? Mm-hmm. The role of the stories. My guess is there may be others, and I'd like to hear the panel, and Mary Kathryn, Maggie, people who study lobbying and petitioning to think about that? What needs to be done politically?
Well, I mean, I will just say, in reflecting on this play and the political process, is that, I was not, as a playwright coming in, I was a little bit coming in from the outside. I was not a leader in the movement itself. And actually, at the very last minute, when they were really struggling to get through the House, I think a lot of leaders in the movement realized the power of the stories and how the women who were coming forward as survivors to tell their stories in congressional hearings, in the press and in the media, was actually moving the dial. And that actually, I think a lot of people in the movement across the board, not just tribal leaders and Native women, would agree and would tell you that VAWA got reauthorized in 2013 because Native women stood up and spoke. That all the other... all the other constituencies were stuck. And when Diane Millich, I am not Diane Millich, let's make that clear. So when she tells her story, her story is so powerful. It is so much more powerful when she tells it. And I was very heartbroken that she got stuck in Denver because of a blizzard. But when Lisa Bruner tells her story, when Billie Joe tells her story, there is a power in that. And I think that's what makes this play powerful. That's what made the political process powerful. And I think it's a huge testament to the fact that I think the biggest victory we've had legally for Indian nations in the history of the United States came from a movement that was created and propelled forward by Native women who told their stories. And I think that really says a lot.
Maggie or Angela?
So I was able to see the discussions behind the scene when the statute was drafted and passed, and it was an incredibly intense experience for me because it didn't look like it was going to make it many, many times. But it was also incredibly inspiring because I got to see that behind the scenes in Congress, it's not just power that counts. They actually do have discussions about the law and what the Constitution means, and they deliberate over these questions. And the real question was whether or not this was constitutional. After Oliphant, there were real concerns. So to the extent that legal scholars and lawyers and academics and activists could get in there and explain the law to Congress quickly in a way that they could understand, it actually moved the process forward exponentially. I know we think that it's just mudslinging and power all the way down, but it's not necessarily the case. There actually is a space for reason and therefore a space for advocacy, not just with the stories of survivors, which I think are so integral and so important, but also about discussions of the law and the Constitution.
And just to add to that, just one other thing that I think we saw with the reauthorization of VAWA and that I think is going to be really critical to us going forward is we're a tiny percentage of the population. I mean, depending on whether you go by enrollment or self-identification, we're 1% to 2% of the US population. By almost every marker in the country, we tend to be the poorest, the most isolated, have the least opportunity, et cetera. So we don't have access to a lot of power and we don't have access to a lot of money. But one thing that we saw with VAWA is that we have to make friends. There has to be coalition politics going on. We have to find people whose interests are aligned with ours in ways that are commonsensical and go to people's basic sense of fairness and justice and what is right, as I think the people tonight, the performers, the men and women, have really demonstrated. And I think being able to speak to that and to find friends and find allies outside of Indian country is really critical to getting legislation passed of this kind.
Can I just add one more comment? Because I feel like we always say, what is the solution? How do we make this change? And I think this is a part of the solution. I think what we are doing here tonight is actually pretty revolutionary. And I'm also, because I'm wearing this lawyer's hat, but I'm also wearing my playwright's hat. And as a playwright, I look at this country culturally which we know informs our laws. And we still live in a country where if you go to the American theater, you're much more likely to see a non-native performing red face on stage than an actual native body, a native person on stage performing native identity. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? And do you know any theater, any professional theater in the United States right now producing a play by a native playwright? I can tell you several theaters that have in the last several years or will soon produce a play by a non-native playwright that puts red face on stage. And when you think about what this play is doing by putting actual native people on stage to tell their stories, that's a pretty revolutionary act. And when you look at the Supreme Court's jurisprudence, you know, I think sometimes when we start talking about it in Oliphant, you know, they're like, well, how could the Supreme Court strip tribes of their jurisdiction? When you're living in a country where you have no voice, this is, the court, you know, responds to that. The court is a political, but it is also a cultural institution. And so I do think that, that art is an important and a very, very, very important part of the solution.
Thank you. We had a play and we have an audience, and I note here that at 20 after 8 on a Thursday night, we have an audience that has, as far as I can tell, well over 100 members still left in it, and I want to thank everybody for coming. And now we'd like to turn the possibility for posing questions to this panel over to you. There is a stand and a microphone in the center aisle. And if you would like to just get up and line up behind that microphone to ask a question, any question, to this panel, or offer some thoughtful remarks, please do so. Keep in mind that we have about 20-25 minutes left in the evening, so that you don't take up so much time that time is not remaining to those behind you. Go ahead.
Pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you so much for having this open discussion and play reading. Beautiful, beautiful work. Congratulations. I am curious and a little questioning because I didn't quite see the connection between the Cherokee and the Alaska Nation. And I know part of the work that is done here is reflecting a lot of the Cherokee struggle. So maybe some elucidation on that would be really great.
Sure, I'm happy to give that. And is Nettie still here? She left? Okay. Well, so, you know, from my point of view, and I'm not Alaskan Native, so, and unfortunately Nettie has left, but we're very thankful that she could be here with us because she came a very long way. And if you can imagine traveling from Alaska all the way here for this, it was at least 30 hours of traveling, and now she's about to make 30 hours back. So, but I think that a lot of the discussions around Alaska politically and in terms of sort of the, you know, everything in Congress gets shortened, and so the conversation gets a bit truncated. But what people say is, well, Alaska's different. And a lot of times when I talk to other federal Indian lawyers who are working in the lower 48, and, you know, because I'm a little bit new on the scene too, I'm like, how do we have this legal framework? Like, how is it that we just seem to have Alaska excluded and we're not fighting this harder? And a lot of people will say, well, Alaska's just different. And so I started talking to a lot of women in Alaska and trying to figure out, why is Alaska different? And the only thing we could figure out is, I mean, because it's not that they don't have tribes. They have 229 federally recognized tribes. They have more tribes than Oklahoma. So it's not because they don't have tribes, it's not because they don't have native people. They have their ancestral homeland, just like we have ours. And when you look at it, I think the point of making that connection is that I think it's really easy for us in this country today to look at what happened to my nation, Cherokee Nation, in 1839 and say, wow, that Trail of Tears was awful, and that Andrew Jackson shouldn't have done that. And I can sit here today and say he should have done that. But what do we do when we're still doing that in Alaska? How do we live with ourselves when we're actually just still doing the exact same thing? And when you look at Alaska, it's the exact repetition. You know, we had Trails of Tears and Indian removal in the 1830s up through the 1880s here. Same thing happened in Alaska. They came in, everyone was living where they had lived for thousands of years, and the government said, you got to move here. If you don't send your kids to this school, we're going to put you in jail. And then in 1887, Congress passed the Dawes Act and basically broke up a lot of tribal reservations and distributed tribal lands to non-Indian settlers. Congress did the same thing to Alaska in 1971. And then when you think about Oliphant, the Supreme Court in 1978 said, you guys don't have jurisdiction anymore. In 1998, the Supreme Court said, there's no Indian country left in Alaska. So to me, they're exactly the same. But, you know, law is just a set of rules that at the end of the day, 9 people decide. And, or Congress when they come in and maybe fix what 9 people decided. So you know, these are all frameworks that we've created, and I think it's really a question, right? How is Alaska different? Because it really isn't, I think.
One quick note, I'd like to mention Hawaii, because that's also treated as different. In Hawaii, there actually is, it's not treated as Indian country. There is no tribal sovereignty, and you have Native peoples who are still fighting every day to have recognition in the first instance. And so I think this patchwork that we have, as we've seen, the patchwork of jurisdiction does not serve Indian women well. The patchwork of treatment of tribes from Alaska to Hawaii to the 50 states, the complexity is alone a cost. It is alone a problem that we need to remedy.
I just want to mention Massachusetts. The Quinault tribe just lost a case recently because the history of federal recognition of tribes in Massachusetts is very different from what it is in other places. So I think there's, to some extent, we actually would like to have the relation between the United States and the tribes be different for each tribe, because each tribe has the ability to create a relationship which suits it. On the other hand, some of these differences are nothing less than discriminatory, because they are denying certain of the Indian nations basic rights and sovereign powers that are given to others without adequate reason other than, you know, we did it in 1978, right? So there's just not good reason for some of these different treatments.
Thanks, Joe. That's great. Question.
Hi, my name is Christopher Healy. I'm actually a student in Professor Riley's Federal Indian Law class. I wanted to say first off that was amazing, and I'm very impressed at the ability of that, to boil down a very complicated legal issue into a way that's very digestible. So I thought that was very impressive. My question is actually somewhat similar to the last question about Alaska. I was just sort of unclear as to why the state doesn't enforce laws in Alaska. I understand that in a lot of ways the situation in Alaska is very similar, but the legal situation, as we learned in class, is really different in Alaska, as you mentioned. And I'm just sort of wondering what it's like on the ground there.
Once again, I wish Nettie was here, but she's not, so I'll take this question. And so, for a long time, the Alaska Attorney General, there are certain, once again, going back to the very basic point, our tribes are sovereign. We don't need the federal government to tell us that we're sovereign. At the same time, we live in a reality of 2015, and for a long time, the state attorney general in Alaska had refused to enforce tribal court protection orders. And so, if you can imagine, a lot of Native women in Alaska, where they suffer the highest rates of domestic violence in the United States, could go to their tribal court, get a protection order, and then the state would refuse to enforce it. So basically, if you went anywhere outside of you were not safe. You couldn't, no law enforcement would protect you. Now, why would the state refuse to enforce protection orders? Honestly, I could make some guesses, but they never really decided to announce their reasoning. So they did recently, the Attorney General within the last several months did come out with a new opinion saying they will now enforce tribal court-issued protection orders. I think they received a few messages from the federal government about how it was in violation of federal law to not enforce those protection orders. So I think they received some encouragement to bring them into compliance. But I think that, for a lot of states, so I can kind of generalize a little bit because I live in Oklahoma. And in this Dollar General case that I was talking about, our Attorney General Pruitt, filed an amicus brief on the side of Dollar General, arguing that, oh yeah, by the way, tribes in Oklahoma also don't have civil jurisdiction over non-Indians. Can you imagine the chaos that would happen if they did? And he listed like a parade of horribles, like if a non-Indian drove into a casino parking lot and didn't realize he was on tribal trust land, and then all of a sudden could be brought into tribal court for doing something awful to someone, oh my gosh. And they list all these parade of horribles. Well, you have to wonder, why is the AG fighting tribal civil jurisdiction so hard? Why does the Alaska AG care so much about not enforcing tribal court protection orders? And I think this is just purely my thought, because I don't work for a state government, but I think that at the end of the day, the rights of our Native women get sacrificed by state governments who want tribal lands, want the resources, the oil, the money, the taxes, the revenues. And that's been happening, as we say in the play, since 1492. So the idea being, I think, for state governments that don't want the resources and the minerals and whatever's on the land within a reservation to be taken away from them. They don't want any kind of precedent that actually recognizes tribal sovereignty, because that might limit their ability somewhere down the road to extract something that could make money. And so that's where you see Native women become the sacrifice for those kinds of profits, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Next question.
Hello, She'e Farina King, Bilagana Nishle, Dokiyaani Bashishchin. My name is Farina King, and I'm a Native American history PhD candidate from Arizona State University, currently a visiting scholar at Dartmouth College. And I'm so grateful to I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to see this so powerful, and I just had to cover my mouth and think of puppies, not to bawl, because my existence is based off of a relationship that probably was rape. We don't know because of the silences, because my grandfather was a parentless Navajo man who went to become a medicine man, but I'm doing my family history and piecing together a story of his mother who worked for a trader, and he slept with several Navajo women and had several children with them. Anyway, so for me, I've often thought about this and how my father, that doesn't exist. He's Navajo, full Navajo. That's not part of his story. His father didn't speak English. This is a part of it. And not only that, but also the stories of my family, and that almost every woman in my family on my Navajo side has faced abuse, sexual, physical, that my father, saw his mother beat to the ground, my grandma. And so this was really strong for me, and thank you so much. I have two quick questions. One is, a lot of abuse that I hear about as well is actually done by Native men, and I found it really amazing in the story how you featured the men supporting the woman here. But how does that affect, this movement as well of the abuse done by Native men? And then secondly, there's the conversation about I've heard some Native American lawyer activists saying we need to stop talking on moral terms in these cases and push more talking about economics. And so how does, an economic terms affect this movement and these battles as well, and also those types of contestations? Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a crack at the first question and then turn it over. So I think absolutely, depending on the demographics of a particular reservation, some, as you know, are heavily allotted and have a lot of non-Indians living there. Some have a lot of non-Indians who come onto the reservation either to live and work or, for other reasons. So your reservation demographics can have a lot to do with what the makeup is, and therefore who enters into relationships, and therefore where domestic violence really rests. So there's no question that on some reservations, a significant part of the domestic violence is occurring in couples where both partners, where both are Indian, where the perpetrator is Indian and the victim is Indian. And one of the things that, just looking at the way that I think tribes have approached this And so tribes do have criminal jurisdiction over Indians on the reservation. And so one of the things that's been really critical is, consistent standard set forms of funding so that tribes can implement the kinds of criminal justice systems that they need so that they can basically police their own communities and hold people accountable. And part of that really is that the Indian Law and Order Commission out of the Tribal Law and Order Act did an amazing exhaustive report about criminal justice in Indian country. And one of the things that they found was that even if a prosecution in a tribal court parallels or in many ways is similar to what would happen in a federal court, just the legitimacy of having the tribe being able to police and enforce its own laws on the reservation among its own people increases the buy-in of the people to the system. Many Native people don't find outside criminal justice systems to be legitimate because for so long they've caused us harm. They haven't worked to our advantage. They haven't worked to protect us. They work to come and take people away. So people don't really trust it. And so one of the things that I think is just in my own research, one of the critical components is investing in tribal justice systems, supporting them, consistent forms of funding, empowering tribes to engage in criminal justice activities themselves on the reservation. And when you do that, you do actually see better outcomes. It hasn't been studied very extensively, but what we do see is there are better outcomes when that happens. So there's a big push to really try to channel some of those funds away from federal or state governments and back into tribal governments partially for that purpose.
With respect to the economic argument, I'll just answer very, very quickly. I haven't seen it work. Not with Congress, not in the way this did. And I think it also doesn't empower communities, our communities in the same way, to talk about economics. Generally, economists do that, whereas this is something that folks can relate to. I think that there are ways to talk about the stability of tribal governments in economics, and that's something that was a major accomplishment of the Harvard Project, to understand that our problem with economics in Indian country is a problem of governance, of the inability of tribal governments to not only know what they're supposed to be doing, but also to govern within the limits, extreme limits that have been set on them by the federal government. So I think that there are arguments there, but as you've seen today, it's hard to have a play about economics in the same way.
That'll be my next play.
She can pull it off, if anyone.
Next.
Hi, my name is Christopher Lukasik. I'm an undergraduate student at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. So, Professor Riley, you talked about how Native people are not really trusting of the criminal justice system, and my question basically is, did the rate of protective orders for Native women increase after the reauthorization? And if so, actually, I'll leave it at that. I have a second question, but I'll hold that off.
So after VAWA, were there more protection orders issues? That's the question. I don't know that precisely. I mean, what we do know is that there were 26 non-Indians prosecuted for domestic violence. Some of those also, not all of them, but some of those also involved the violation of a protection order, some which were tribal and some which were issued by other sovereigns. So it certainly was a feature of that, and really crimes that probably would have gone unprosecuted otherwise. One other thing that was really interesting and also goes to the protection order issue is that if you look at the assessment of one of the tribes that had the most prosecutions in the pilot project period, it was Pasquayaqui in Arizona. And they calculate, and I'm going to give you the statistic and maybe a little off, but it's something around that of the 18 cases they had involving 15 defendants, those defendants had had close to 100 contacts with police prior to the arrest that led to their prosecution. But many times the police, tribal police were acting as a peace officer in those instances, and then the tribe didn't have jurisdiction, and then nothing happened. And then there's another contact, and then nothing happened. Not all of the contacts were criminal in nature. They could have been a variety of different kinds of contacts, but almost 100 contacts of those defendants. And certainly many of them involved violations of protection orders. So I don't know exactly if the number has increased, but there's clear that there is crime happening in Indian country by non-Indians.
And my second question is, what type of culturally appropriate prevention programs need to be implemented to actually prevent violence against Native women?
Well, I think there's a whole range of different programs, and we actually have the VAWA that got reauthorized in 2013, as I said earlier, was the result of a huge movement, and a lot of the women who are involved in the movement are involved in their own communities and are involved in this work, and so a lot of tribes have tribal programs that are led by Native women in those communities that are leading the way. And actually Lisa Bruner, sitting right here, is a really great example. And so I would encourage anyone to talk to her about the efforts that she's undertaken to do a lot of that work. And I will just give a quick shout out to also one of my good friends is Gregory Grigcloud, and he's working at Rosebud right now, and he has a group called Wicha-Agli. And that's spelled W-I-C-A, new word, A-G-L-I. So look it up. They're doing amazing work. The whole theory of that group is it's led by men, and it's this idea that the way to stop violence against women is to educate the men, and that it's actually a man's responsibility. And so they're doing, and what's so beautiful about the work that they're doing is that the tribal court there in Rosebud has basically taken them under on a contract. And so anyone who's convicted of a domestic violence crime in Rosebud Tribal Court will then go through the program with Wicha-Agli that he runs. And it's a culturally based program because it's not within Lakota culture to treat women that way, to abuse women, right? So it's about restoring the culture and restoring the value of women, because in our tribal cultures, and I don't want to speak too broadly, but I've never encountered a tribal culture that didn't practice respecting women. And so, yes. So I think in terms of what I think, in terms of the most culturally appropriate best programs are when our men stand up and say, it's my job to work with other men in our community and to teach them how to treat women. Now, unfortunately, because of all the jurisdictional issues, we're not really in a place where a program like that works with non-Indians, because even though we have the restored jurisdiction in VAWA, it's very westernized. And it's imposing a very westernized system on us. And so things that we want to do outside of that, we have to get creative.
I think just one follow-up. There's nothing more culturally appropriate than local control and allowing tribes to self-govern and to set their own programs and to protect their own people in the way they see fit.
It's well stated. Thank you. So our last question, and then I want to leave the last word after this question to Shelley Lowe. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jen Derenwater. I'm also Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. So, yay. I have a question, but then I also want to just quickly say I did my master's thesis in Alaska. So I can speak, I'm certainly not going to speak for anyone who's not myself and my tribe, but I do know that the rates of sexual assault are so high there that one of the weekly free papers that you can get in Anchorage, it actually every week has a rape report with a listing of all of the sexual assaults that have been reported to the police. And I've never encountered that anywhere else in the US. So my question, you touched a little bit on about men and culture, how to get our men more organized and involved in fighting against assault of women. So you covered that. But the other question that I had is, what can we do for Indigenous women who live in urban areas to fight all of the abuse that we suffer? Because, yes, we need to address what happens on reservations and reserves in Canada and so forth, but so many of us are urban and we're still experiencing a great deal of violence. And yes, technically the law is supposed to be there to protect us, but it certainly doesn't. So what are your legislative or policy ideas on that?
I think criminal justice systems need to be reformed generally. I think we've seen disparities in enforcement and means of enforcement across communities quite recently in very intense ways. And so I think that our discussions about criminal justice should incorporate Native women, they should incorporate Native men, because the statistics are equally as troubling across minorities. And so that's one solution, but I think in addition to that, there could be culturally specific legislative solutions that do look at the particular problems that Native women face within urban centers, and the fact that they're taking with them this concern about government involvement to those urban centers in a way to address that concern and the way police interact with them in particular.
And this might sound really abstract, but I truly believe that the restoration and recognition of our tribe's inherent sovereignty to protect tribal citizens and including its own Native women, when that legal framework shifts, I think we'll see either as a result of or as a part of, or maybe the driving force will be a cultural shift in the United States where women go from being sexual objects to be abused to being actual citizens to be respected. And I think when you look at a lot of the way Native women are depicted in American culture, right? I mean, they're just a Halloween costume right now in the United States. I mean, literally. Or maybe, a really like a Pocahontas kind of character in a Disney movie. And so I think when we're talking off of tribal lands and the rates of domestic violence against our Native women in urban areas, I think at the root of that is, the legal framework and the cultural misunderstanding that perpetuates from that when our tribal sovereign nations aren't real, then how can any American citizen conceive of their women as real? And I think that's the problem we're facing.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to leave the final word to Shelley Lowe, Executive Director of HUNAP.
Thank you. I just have some books actually to give out. I want to give a shout out to the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center in Montana. They have been major supporters to this play and to Mary Kathryn, and it's very important to them that this play be performed and heard everywhere. So on behalf of them and their thanks to Harvard, I want to acknowledge a few people. There's information about this book on your chair. It's Safety for Native Women, VAWA, and American Indian Tribes, and it's published by the Resource Center. I have one for each of the panelists, and I won't ask you to come here at the moment. You can stay there. I have one for Aaron and Esther for all their hard work on behalf of NALSA. You guys can come grab yours real quick. As students, they took time out of their busy schedules to help us do some fundraising. We want to thank them for that. Bringing this to Harvard is a feat all in itself, I think, sometimes. It was very powerful, as you have seen, but it's also something that you really have to convince an institution that, yes, we should do this. And I want to thank Dan for helping with that as a conversation. Thank you, Dan. But then we have to thank Radcliffe, and the first person who we had to talk to about this, and we had to say, come on, this is good, it fits our thematic here, let's do this, and she said, yes, let's do this. I want to thank Becky Wasserman. And more importantly, Becky then said, yes, let's do this, but we have to get the big approval, which can be kind of scary. Sometimes you're like, okay, I don't know, okay, all right. And she was pitched the idea, and she wholeheartedly said yes, even when she saw the budget. So we are at Radcliffe tonight for a reason, and Dean Cohen, I want to thank you for that, for being such a great support. And for being here all evening with us, thank you. And lastly, after we got it and we were set, we were ready to go, we sent some little personal notes to the provost and the president of Harvard and said, we're doing this, can you support us? And they said yes. So I want to thank Provost Garber and President Drew Faust for their support. I have the book here for Provost Garber. I'm going to ask Associate Provost Lori Gross to come and get this. We will send President Faust a book to her. For the evening. Thank you everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.